So, hi everyone, back with another video, and in this one we're going to look at our setup in detail. Now I've actually split these videos up into two videos because there's quite a lot to go through. So we're going to look at part one this week, and then part two will be out next week where we carry on looking in detail at getting our setup right. Now if you do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like. If you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. That really helps me to keep this content coming regularly. And the last thing, if you click the little bell notification icon, you can click that, and then every time I make a new upload, you'll be notified so you won't miss any other video. So let's have a look at this video then. Let's get into having a look in detail all about our setup. Now, setup is a little bit different to technique. So your setup is what you would actually look like if somebody was to take a still picture of you down on the shot, what your bridge length looked like, how you were holding the cue, whether your arm was vertical. That's your setup, and that's what we want to try and get right in this section. Now, technique is obviously about how you actually then strike the ball, so how you pull the cue back, your backswing, how your grip works. So we'll look at that separately in a short while. Now with our setup, we have 4 points of contact on the cue, and we're going to look at all of them in this section. So our 4 points of contact with the cue are our grip hand, our bridge hand at the front, our chest, and then our chin down on the cue. So we have those 4 points of contact whenever we're on the cue, and all of those contact points help to keep the cue in a straight line and help us to cue as straight as possible. So the first thing with our setup that we want to get right and we want to get consistent is our bridge on the table. Now this is important because this needs to be nice and stable and form a nice base so that the cue's got a nice groove to run through, and we know that the bridge hand isn't going to move around. Now you've probably seen this again in other videos, but the way you form your bridge is to place your hand flat on the cloth and then try and keep the palm of your hand still in contact with the cloth and the tips of your fingers, and pull your knuckles up towards the ceiling so that you're trying to, almost like you're trying to pull the cloth up in the air. And that basically forms the bridge nice and stable on the table that you want. Now you also then move your thumb to the side so that you've got your thumb against that first finger, and that's what gives you that nice groove then for the cue to run along, so that the cue's not moving side to side and you haven't got that lateral movement. Now remember something incredibly important here again, and this is true of everything we do when we're trying to improve with our snooker technique. Although we want to have these contact points on the table and have a bridge nice and stable, we also still want that bridge relaxed. We don't want the hand having lots of tension in there, because again, that's just unnecessary tension. So although it's nice and stable and I've spread those fingers out and I've pulled my hand up towards the ceiling so I've got that nice solid bridge, I'm still trying to just make sure that hand isn't absolutely tense, it's just that little bit relaxed so that you haven't got any of that unwanted tension. Then the other thing that's incredibly important about our bridge on the table is that actually our bridge height will move depending on whether we're playing right at the top of the cue ball. We'll try and make our bridge a little bit higher, and if we're playing a screw shot right at the bottom of the cue ball, I'll try and make my bridge a little bit lower. So with your bridge forming on the table, it's going to be higher and lower, so you're pulling your fingers up more depending on what type of shot you're playing. So I've got these two cue balls here. Now if I was to play a topspin on the first shot, I'm going to have my bridge nice and high so that I can get to the top of the white. I've pulled my fingers up nice and high, got that V so that the cue can't move, and then I can pull the cue back and play that topspin shot. Now this one, if I wanted to hit the bottom of the white, I would just have my bridge a lot flatter on the table, still trying to form it nice and securely, but it's a lot flatter on the table. Now I can get to the bottom of the white, and that will impart that backspin onto the cue ball as it goes along the table. So with your setup, the first thing we need to do is we need to address the grip. Now this is obviously incredibly important. With our grip hand, this is the only thing that's actually controlling the cue. So it's incredibly important that we try and get this right. Now you may have seen this in other videos over the years, but the simplest way to form your grip is to literally just pick the cue up off the table and let the hand just naturally go around the cue where it wants to fall. Now this is your basic grip, but I'm going to talk about two different grips here and the way most players end up gripping the cue. So the first grip is to get your thumb and your first finger wrapped around the cue. and the fleshy part of the hand here, this part sits on the cue, and that's in contact with the cue constantly. You've got the thumb and the first finger wrapped around the cue, and that stays as a constant all the way through the shot, so through the backswing and the delivery. So you want to get those wrapped round, then these other fingers are acting as stabilising fingers, and you want these on the cue because obviously we're getting some extra control from our hand. It's not just that we can just hold the cue here and we're not worried about what these other fingers are doing. Remember that our hand is the only thing that's going to control this cue. This is the only thing that's going to touch the cue and give us all that touch and feel and control when we're playing. So these other fingers are very important as well. So we've got our constant contact point with the thumb and the first finger and that fleshy part there. And then these other three fingers go in contact with the cue so that you're just adding a little bit of extra control to the cue there. Now in terms of strength, when you're doing that, if I was to give you an idea, so out of 10, I always describe my grip pressure when I'm holding the cue, so when my hand is around the cue and I'm ready to play a shot, I would say it's about a 4 or a 5. The other way to explain that, and the way I really like players to get a feel for it, is that if I was to hold my cue out in front of me like this, I would want enough pressure to show that my cue doesn't fall through my hand like that, but it's also just tight enough so that it's just staying where it is without the cue falling to the ground. The other way I describe it is, if someone was to then try and pull this cue away from me, so when I'm down on a shot and I'm doing my feathers, if you were to try and pull the cue off me, you would easily manage to pull the cue out of my hand. So that gives you some idea of how tightly you need to be holding the cue. You don't want to be absolutely strangling the cue, you want lots of nice feel, and you also don't want it too loose that occasionally you end up with some players that you see a gap there and you see daylight between the cue and the hand. So that's why we say that thumb and the first finger is that constant there, and you've got that nice control. So that's the way you want to form your grip. Let's have a look at the second way that the very common way that players form that grip. Right, so the second really common way that players will form their grip, and players like Ronnie O'Sullivan, Stephen Lee used to do it like this. This is actually the way I do it personally as well, but that doesn't mean that players have to copy Ronnie or Stephen Lee or the way I'm doing it. It's just to know that these are the two main ways that players tend to grip the cue, is to do it more with the middle two fingers. So when I'm holding the cue, instead of having this first finger and my thumb really tight round the cue or having it as a constant, they're still round the cue, but I'll let this first finger relax a little bit more, and I'm getting more of my feeling on the shot from my middle two fingers. So again, when I'm in my address position, I can feel more through the middle of my hand. That's what's controlling the cue, and that's what I'm holding the cue with, more so than doing it right in the front of the hand. Now again, exactly the same as the other grip, the pressure is exactly the same. I'm doing it, you can see my first finger is a little bit relaxed, but if I was to hold the cue out in front of me with those middle two fingers, the cue can't fall through the air. That's the grip pressure I want. And again, exactly the same as the other one. If you were to then try and grab the cue off me when I'm in my address position, you would easily manage to pull the cue off me. So, two slightly different ways of gripping the cue there, but the important thing is both of those grips are nice and relaxed. We don't want the hand strangling the cue with lots of tension. We need to try and keep our body nice and relaxed for that nice fluid motion, and that's what gives us all of our touch and feel in the balls. As always everybody, I hope you found this video useful. If you have got any comments or questions about the video, remember to leave those in the comments section below. I do try and read through as many comments as I possibly can, so if you leave your question in there, I will try and give you a reply. Remember, if you did enjoy this video, remember to give me a like. If you're new to this channel and you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. That just really helps me to keep this content coming regularly, and I do try and do a new upload every single week. Now, next week's video is going to be the second part to this one, so we're going to look at some other important aspects of our technique that we need to get right, so make sure you don't miss that one. And if anyone's interested in any personal one-to-one coaching sessions, all the details for that, my website and my contact details, are in the description box below, so have a look at that and please get in touch with me. And as always, thanks a lot for watching everybody, thanks for the support, catch you in the next one, cheers.